Peace. You are tuned into Edible Activists with your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. On this show, we honor Black people and their stories in food and agriculture, celebrating legacy, traditions, contributions, and creativity that all stem from the land. So tune in and let's get started. Peace. I am your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones, and I am super excited because I have a returning guest. We love a returning guest, Pastor Heber Brown III, the founder of the Black Church Food Security Network. And Pastor Brown, I'm so excited to have you back on the show. Welcome to Edible Activists.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to be back.
Absolutely. So, Pastor, it has been a few years since we chatted. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
But you had to take a break. You took a bit of a sabbatical, if memory serves me correct, but you still have had a lot of great things happening. And the last time you and I chatted, we talked about a vision, and that vision was Black churches using their land to grow food, connect communities, and build sovereignty. And so that conversation felt super urgent because we talked during COVID, right? And what seemed, super urgent then, and it definitely was, honestly feels like a lifeline now, to be truthfully honest. Like, we need this. Like, this is what we need for us to sustain ourselves. And so I have you back and I want to dig deeper. And so I'm just always enlightened by your wisdom and all the gems that you share. Not because you're a pastor too, Pastor.
Well, thank you. I'm excited about this conversation.
Absolutely. So since we talked last, and I think that was episode 82, by the way, for folks who want to go back and listen, the network has continued to grow, like boots to the ground. You've been boots to the ground. Staff has been boots to the ground. And so, you mentioned writing a book since the last time we had chatted. We talked about the Black church census, which like really tugged the heartstring for both you and I. And that was just launching. And so if you could just take a moment to like catch us up, what has shifted and what has deepened for you personally, since the last time we chatted.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to come back and to share, in part because it does allow for a pit stop and reflection point from that last conversation to this one, and to really do an assessment of how far we've come and the ways that we've grown and what we have learned over this time as well. And so, in the way of a catch up, a few things come top of mind. One, thankfully, our organization continues to spread across the country. We are now at 300 congregations in a national directory that's focused on food justice and food sovereignty in our community and utilizing our assets in ways that align with the mission that we've consistently stood on for since our very beginning. And so that's exciting to see. We've also had some exciting ways that we have piloted and experimented with various initiatives, because one of the things that I'm very cognizant of is that we are reading, evaluating, and moving with real-time analysis and assessments of what's going on in the world. And so, Melissa, we have the plans we put on paper, and then we have when life starts lifing, and then finding that middle point between the plan and the life, and then what's the way forward. And so one of the things as I go back and think about that time during COVID, and isn't it something that now we are in a similar state of urgency and emergency, and it feels like these waves are so frequent that it doesn't feel as rare and unique anymore, that we have to have a heightened concern about how do we feed ourselves. So some of the things that we've been blessed to do is, one, we were blessed a few years back to pilot a CSA program. And for those who are not familiar, community supported agriculture. It's like a subscription program where you pay a farmer upfront. I mean, your listeners, your viewers will know You pay the farmer up front for 6, 8, 10 weeks of produce at some point in the year. So we were excited to do a pilot in partnership with the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, the historic congregation of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the King family. And we wanted to bring a Black farmer and that congregation together in order to do their own CSA program. And so Pastor Raphael Warnock, United States Senator, invited me and our organization to come and be a part of their creation care worship services for a few years. And along with that, bring programming to the church around food sovereignty and food justice. And in the context of that, it helped to really set the runway for this CSA program. We got about 100 members of that church to put money down up front to a Black farmer. Shout out to Bread and Butter Farms in rural Georgia. And 100 members of that congregation signed up and got about 10 weeks of produce. And that farmer and that farming couple actually in that farm, brought produce to Ebenezer Baptist Church every Sunday during the program period, so that after worship, members would come out and get their produce and go on about their day. So they get their praise on, they get their produce, and go on about their business. That was a super exciting pilot, and we pray to expand that to other congregations as well, because we really think there's something powerful that happens when you bring the Black farmer and Black churches together in partnership. If we can eliminate the middleman, so to speak, and also leverage our existing assets and complement each other in the ways that we need support, it can be really powerful. And we've seen literal evidence that that is something that can happen. And so we pray to expand with that. Our Black church census it's something that has had a deeper horizon. And so we had some preliminary data with respect to that, where we have moved forward with what we've learned about subsets of the Black church community around their physical assets. I'm talking about their commercial kitchens, their vans, their classrooms, etc. And while we were excited to get some preliminary data, I'm going to go ahead and bring y'all behind the curtain. You know, the last time we spoke, and I'm so glad you reminded me, I very excitedly told you that if we were to do this Black church census, that it would feel like the keys to Wakanda. That if we could get a full analysis of what we actually already have in our hand, that it could shift conversations with respect to how we address food apartheid in our community. Well, we started going out to try to find partners to help us with the research arm and the research avenue of that initiative. And Melissa, I got to be honest, we had some very well-resourced academic institutions that expressed some interest, but we had some differences when it came to who owns the data. And I just did not feel comfortable having that data be turned over to, in this particular instance, it was a PWI, and them having the keys to Wakanda. Like, no, I couldn't do it. So it slowed things down, frankly, on that initiative. And we just made do with what we had. You know, for a lot of folks who are listening to this, they also run and lead grassroots organizations. And so they know, you know, you make $1 out of 15 cents. You do your best to pull together everything you have. And I am proud that the Black Church Food Security Network is scrappy, and that with a fraction of the budget that many other food organizations, particularly white-led groups, have, we are making profound impact in our own community in our own ways. And even with that said, you know, it would go a long way for us to partner with an institution, a research institution where we aligned on values and understood the importance of Black ownership, even of data. And so I want to shout out the Morgan State University, my alma mater, one of my alma maters, my HBCU, where I did my undergrad. And we are in conversations now, and I'm really excited about this, for them to be a partner in helping us to do a census, but with a focus on Baltimore. You know, our last episode, I think you said was 82, number 82. Sometimes I look back at that young man, I say, oh Lord, bless his heart. Bless his heart. He's out here trying to save the whole world by the weekend. Oh, bless him, Lord. And so, you know, I got some grays in my chin, Melissa, as you can see, and I got a little seasoning of life on me. And so this Black church census now will have a tighter focus on the city of Baltimore, our birthplace, the cradle of where we were created, and really have with a more focused view and with a partner that has institutional deep roots here in the city of Baltimore. I'm really excited about what we'll be able to do here, particularly because, and I'll pause here, but particularly because, you know, unfortunately, Baltimore City is the home of redlining in the United States. We have the dubious distinction and dishonor of being the home of where it all started. And I think because of that, we have special opportunity to those of us who live here and are from here to address that ugly, treacherous history by producing data, programming, initiatives, and approaches and frameworks that work to overcome that the ripple effect of redlining that still is with us to this very day.
Pastor, so much to unpack. We can conclude the show now. Y'all got your update? Oh my. Okay. The data sharing, paring down on your focus for the census on Baltimore. Goodness, the data sharing alone is a whole nother conversation. Thank you for, having integrity. It is easy to say, yes, let's partner. We understand that all this is transactional. I kind of lifted this up in a conversation that I had actually at a conference on Friday, right? Like, in whether it's funding or other types of supports, right? There is funding and other types of partnerships that really truly support your mission, and they can potentially reshape your mission if you do not have boundaries. And so it's easy to oblige when you want the thing, but you really do have to step back and say, like, what does this really truly mean? Like, and who really holds this power? And what is being taken away from me, that will feel out of alignment. So I don't know all the ins and outs of that conversation, but just from what I know from what you shared, oh my gosh, thank you. And that data sharing is no joke. It's probably a larger conversation to be had in this space. Like, it is really big, and especially in the times that we live in right now. So thank you for that. In terms of, deciding to just focus on Baltimore with the census, obviously when we talked about this was a seed. And I had brought this up. I was like, listen, like, I know there's like, what does this collective like data look like across all churches, even in the US, right? I mean, and it's hard to not want to collect that data across the entire United States, especially with the traveling that you do. Listen, Pastor, I was in Mississippi at the time of this recording 3 weeks ago. I spent a lot of time in Jackson. And I was at a particular church. I was actually at my grandmother's church on my mom's side. And this family, they own this church. And when we were driving into the property, I'd been a few times. My aunt was telling me, yeah, they own all this land, they own the church. And I mean, it was maybe an acre. It could be a half an acre, but it was a lot. And I said, and I immediately thought about you. And as you know, you can go into like pretty much like any part of like a city and you can count the churches when you're driving down the street. You can count them. They're on that corner, this corner. And Jackson is the same way. I mean, churches that don't even exist, like they, just torn down, dilapidated. And so I say that again, like, listen, I understand like the urgency of wanting to collect that data because it's so many churches who have land, as you know, you do this work. And so with that, I also bring that up because the pilot that you did was phenomenal, like 100 people. That's great what you did in Atlanta. But what are some other considerations to be thought of, like when you do visit other churches? Because like I think about a few churches in a certain area of Jackson where the membership, like we know the economic, the economics behind, parts of not even just the South. We don't just even need to say name the South, but like a church that might not be able to pour into a subscription. But even way before that, like just even getting started, like that blueprint, right? Like, what are some of those considerations when you do come across a church that could, like, all of them could benefit, I guess, from like having this model? But what are some of the things that you think about that we need to consider when we do, come across a church that could implement a program or a CSA, comparable to the pilot that you did in Atlanta?
Yeah, great question. One of the things that I consider and that I urge others to consider as well is assessing the degree of buy-in from the leadership. You just can't get around it. The pastor, the bishop, the elder, the deacon board, the trustee board, they have to have meaningful buy-in to the idea. I'm not saying they got to be outside in the garden or setting up the farmers market or running the CSA, but if it is something that's tangential to them, something on the periphery, don't really care about it too much, that's going to be communicated in various ways, and it's going to signal to the congregation that this is not a priority. And so it's very important to have that buy-in from the leadership. And that buy-in, another consideration, that buy-in being set up in a way that aligns with what they actually care about. And so, I've lived some life, Melissa L. Jones, since the last time we talked. Lord have mercy. That's another cousin conversation. But because of the life that's knocked on my door, I've been in therapy, I've been group counseling, I've had some relationship shifts and all the real things that every human being goes through, right? And in the process of me working through my own stuff and continuing to this day to kind of work through my own stuff, I've been sensitized to the importance of loving people and supporting people the way they need to be loved and supported, as opposed to the way that you by default love and support. Now, I can take that from an individual standpoint and stretch the lens to look at what that means when you're connecting with the congregation. Because for so many of us in the food justice space, we're the ones who live and breathe this stuff. We're the ones that watch documentaries and love running through the forest and through the farms barefooted. We're the ones that, all of that. And that's beautiful. But that may not necessarily be the lived experience of leadership of the church. And you just coming in to propose an idea based on your starting point of why you care about it may not register with them in the same way that ignites them to step forward. And so I really, in terms of a consideration, would invite people to, even if you have a good idea, pause, put it in neutral, put it on the shelf, and spend some time getting to know that church, getting to know that leadership, discerning what they care about by virtue of what fills up their weekly calendar, what's on their annual calendar, what do they promote on their website, what's in the newsletter, what's spoken about during pastoral remarks, what's in the bulletin. All those types of things and so many more can give you indication of what they care about. Another thing is look at what they're already doing food-wise. Every church, especially every Black church, like the second most holiest space in the building is the kitchen, second only to the pulpit. And so what are they doing with food? Do they have food distribution ministry already? Do they have a soup kitchen? Do they got a pantry? Are they giving out food in partnership with the local food bank? Like really do a deep analysis of what they're already doing. And then like for many of us who grew up, if you're of similar my generation, then you know about Double Dutch. Once you do an assessment of what they're already doing, then we should be outside them ropes looking at what they're doing and waiting for our time to jump in to support what they are doing and earn and gain some congregational currency and credibility by being consistent with supporting what they are already doing. I know it's urgent. I know, the time. I know. I get it. It feels like the world's going to end in 25 minutes. I get it. But just in case it's still around in the 26th minute, you will want to know what the congregation already puts money to. already puts energy to. Even looking at how much money are they spending already on maintenance of their lawn. Because if you can redirect money on the church budget that's already there for the grounds and redirect it toward a garden or help to redirect it toward some other creative agricultural implements and initiatives, then you're not adding something additional to what they're already doing. You're helping them to do what they want to do anyway. Last thing I'll say on this in terms of a consideration. We got to be real clear about how much we have wonderful assets that are in our churches, yes. And I would imagine, I've never been to your family's church in Jackson, but I would imagine that if I know anything about the Black church, there is a core group, a faithful few, they holding it down. And that group is getting older. And there is not an influx of people coming in the door to help maintain and grow the ministry to where it can be. It's heyday, and it pains me to say it, but it's the truth. I'm a preacher's kid, you know, Melissa. I'm telling the truth. It pains me to say this, but the heyday of many of our churches is decades old. It was the prime and the heyday. And in fact, we saw it growing up. You had older members of the church, then there was this big gap, then there's younger children, right? So I'm a part of the younger children that stayed. But there's a whole nother group that left and never came back. It doesn't mean they left God. It means they found other places. For many of them, they found other places and ways to gain spiritual nourishment, community, and care. And there's nothing wrong with that. The church still, in light of that, however, has opportunity to present itself as an additional space for nurture, for care, for community, especially at such a time as this. So I'm saying that, and I'll shut down because I can talk about this all day. I'll sit down and say this. One of the things, and I came into this interview, Melissa, saying I'm going to tell the truth and not just give spotlight, whatever. And so I already gave one about the data piece. Let me give another one. It is something that stays on my mind, the urgency and opportunity of recruiting more of, I'm going to say our age group. I don't know your exact birthday, but I claimed you as cousin in the first 20 seconds when we met. So it is something that stays in my brain that we need more people of our age group. And I'm talking about folk who got a little bit of professional experience. Maybe you got a degree. Maybe you got some life experience that really seasons your wisdom. You got some know-how with your hands, energy, all of that. If we just watch the church that our mothers, fathers, grandparents, elders poured their lives into, if we just watch it shrivel on the vine, shame on us. And I am still trying to figure out, if I'm straight up with you, out of all the crisscrossing the country I've done, preaching, teaching, speaking, social media, online, all the stuff, and Lord knows I got so much more to do, but I am still trying to figure out how to make a compelling enough case for more of our age group and those younger to see the urgency of the moment. And I don't hate to say it because it's the truth. Radically reorient their lives around enhancing this indigenous Black-led institution in service of a holistic spirituality that does not just look at what happens to me after I die. A holistic spirituality of how can I live into the fullness of who God is calling to be while I'm living? We have an opportunity to do that. And the more funerals I preach and the more churches I visit and see the shrinking number of the faithful few, the more worried I get sometimes that we are going to miss an opportunity because big box stores are waiting to gobble that church up and make it a parking lot. Developers are waiting to make that historic black-led institution an apartment building or a place for a coffee house or something, a cafe or something. And not to say that there's anything terrible about those places, but it is to say black owned, black led institutions and black land ownership. So much of it has been in the coffers and the treasure trove of our churches. And you ain't got to be Christian to care about black land ownership. You ain't got to know Bible verses to recognize that having actual buildings with assets can further our collective freedom dreams, whether you got baptized or not. And so I'll stop there because again, I can go, but that's a real struggle for me. I am a few years out. I'm beginning my succession season. Maybe I'll share this later, but I'm thinking different kinds of thoughts about where do we go from here. Lord knows I've gotten the applause, the invitations. Oh, Heber Brown, Heber Brown. Okay, yeah. Praise God, praise God. Listen, how about this work though? I don't need fans or followers. Where the comrades at that will reorient their lives? And I feel like I jumped off a cliff, Melissa, when I stepped away from pastoring. I jumped. I took a leap of faith for Black power. I stepped down after 14 years. I stepped down from being a pastor. And like many others who are church rooted and connected, after 14 years, I was the pastor. I could have rolled that into the sunset and just stayed there, right? But I saw an urgency for our people, and I still see it. And I think it's going to take more people jumping off the cliff. I'm so sorry to say this. There's some things I had to sacrifice. There's some things I had to say no to that has helped to result in great things happening. But I can't help but to imagine, what if more of us said, you know what? I'm going to reorient my life because of the urgency of this moment. And if all those elders die before we step up and call and gather their wisdom, their lived experience, they knew what it was. I'm sorry. I'm a Black Baptist preacher, Melissa. I'm sorry. One more point as I go to my seat. These elders knew what life was like prior to integration. They have actual memories of Black people running everything out of necessity. They have a lived point of reference and lived experience that I believe is valuable to us who've never seen it. We've read about it. We've seen the documentaries. We go to the museum. We've never lived an experience where Black folks out of necessity was running everything and had negotiated postures with the white community. But they had their own thing. And I think if we don't sit down, slow down, sit at their feet, gather their wisdom, refine it with our lived experience and perspective, we would be losing out on something, because this is the last generation who've seen that in this country. So what happens when they're all gone? And so that's where my heart is. That's where the considerations to keep in mind. I'm sorry, there's a long answer, but that's where my head is.
I mean, I feel like I just have to sit in that for just a moment. Oh my gosh. Y'all can't see me, but I'm telling you, hands waving, amen, amen, and everything. And I have the blessing of both my grandmothers still being in my life. One is about to turn 91, Lord's will, and she has always had a deep freezer, collard greens, something put away. That was just life to her, not a movement, not a philosophy. So just it was just how you survived. And I sit with her and I think this is the last generation that lived what we only read about, that self-sufficiency, that collective knowing. And when they're gone, what do we have? But I'll be honest with you, Pastor, and I feel like I've mentioned this in the first conversation that we had, is that, and this connects back to what you said about needing our generation to step up. My own relationship with the church has shifted. I felt duped coming up. I had to step away myself. I came back, but I still have questions. And I wonder if that's bigger than just me, because I want to be clear this work isn't exclusively for people in the church, but we are talking about the intersection of food and faith. So when that faith piece fractures, when our generation steps back from the institution, how much does that disconnection have to do with why we haven't been able to fully tie ourselves to this work and really build on what our elders knew?
I think we've often heard it said that two things can be true at the same time. And I think one of the things that you just spoke to was the very real reality that far more often than not, our churches, many of our churches, not all, many of our churches embrace a theology and practice that does not challenge to sufficient sustained degree the racist, sexist, homophobic dynamics of the society and all the other isms of our society. And I remember being a little boy in church, just like you've referenced growing up in church, and reading the scriptures and going to Sunday school and hearing the stories and really taking it in at face value of what was told to me. I was like, oh, okay, if this the program, then let's run that program. Jesus said what? Okay, cool. Let's go do what Jesus said, or let's go do what Jesus did. And while many churches strive to align their actual practice with what they profess, it is a struggle. And then it's also a struggle for some other churches who have digested a Western white perversion of the way of Yeshua Jesus that packages itself as a liberating Christianity that really is not. It's white Christianity in blackface, and it's a very painful thing to go to a church and you see black people everywhere and black stuff everywhere, but the message and the practice of their faith is very well aligned with and comfortable with a colonial version of and perversion of Christianity. And that's real. I also want to say it's very real, people's hurtful experiences in churches. You'll find in some quarters some very judgmental people in church. You'll find folks who, got amnesia all of a sudden off of who they were at 21 and 23. And now because they're 70 and they outlived their mistakes and everybody forgot what they did, and they don't want to act a certain way to other people. And I think all of that hurts. All of that hurts the church. And so even as I lift up the church and still will champion it as one of the peaks of where we need to organize ourselves as a community, I don't do that without also recognizing the foibles, fumbles, and outright failures of Black churches in so many different ways. In so many different ways, we've fallen short when it comes to children, when it comes to women, Black women, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to honoring an expansive view of God that goes far beyond just the pages of our Bibles. As one of my favorite quotes from George Washington Carver, he calls nature God's listening station. And he says we can hear God's voice if we tune in enough to nature. Well, he is saying that there's another anchor of where and how to experience God. But that's not something. If your church is anything like my church, it wasn't something, as much as I loved my church and I'm still serving at my church now, and I'll talk about that in a second, but that kind of wisdom wasn't something that was regularly spoken of. Like, you can have a very holy experience walking through the forest, So there's a lot of work to be done. I will say that one of the things that as I recognize that what you said is true, there's a few things that come to mind. One of them is, my question for us is, are we able to parse out and honor the nuance of this particular moment in such a way that fully recognizes our individual lived experience and all of the value that's in what we've lived through, and at the same time make a socio-political analysis regarding the freedom dreams and collective aspirations of our community and say, well, listen, in this space, with full respect to my individual experience here and the experiences of others that I know, this space still holds tremendous potential to be a powerful agent alongside others for our collective liberation? Can we hold those two in tension? Without having to abandon your view or your personal experience, but also without abandoning the very real. I mean, there's a reason why white racist terrorism targets the black church. There's a reason why they burn down churches and put crosses on the front yard. There's a reason why church leaders and pastors are assassinated in Bible study, or those 4 little girls were bombed in Sunday school, because whether we as black folk recognize it or not, our stated and open enemies recognize that the black church is a base of power for black people. And we've got to attack that. No matter what our individual feelings are about it, when the bombs and the burnings and the lynchings happened, the black church was in the equation because our open enemies recognize that as a base of support, a base of power for us. So I guess I would be inviting us into nuance. And in this era of quick sound bites, instant reactions, the think pieces that get written before the issue is even resolved fully. Like I get it. Long form planning, thinking, writing, analysis is not as popular as it used to be. But I think it's imperative for this moment that we take a breath and lean into the nuance and see if there's ways that we could still, because Melissa, we're going to struggle either way. Pick your hard, for real. Pick it. Now, for me, just the way God made me, and everybody's different. Well, how God made me is not better or worse than nobody else. But for me, I would rather struggle alongside black people. Yes, some folks in church get on my last half a nerve. But Melissa, I would rather struggle there than go into white spaces and be code switching all day, doing emotional labor for other people's stuff, and come home exhausted. Like, I ain't doing that. I thank God for those who are equipped to do that. I'm just saying it ain't me. So I'm going to go over here where black folk are, and that's going to be my hard, and that's going to be the mountain I climb. That's also one of the reasons, Melissa, last thing I'll say is why after I stepped down from the church I was pastoring here in Baltimore, I needed a church home. And so I went back to my home church where my dad still serves as pastor. In fact, this year we'll celebrate 40 years as pastor of this church. It's the church that raised, these people knew me before I knew me, right? All of that. It's a beautiful thing. And I am at the shoulder of my dad, who's still the senior pastor, but I'm at the shoulder of my dad helping in the ministry, supporting with preaching, teaching. And one of the things, Melissa, and I was so giddy about this, I put my hat in the ring to be the Sunday school superintendent. And I am the Sunday school superintendent at the Shiloh Baptist Church in Baltimore County. Now, why am I so excited about it? Because, Melissa, some of the things in terms of the shifts in faith that you just referenced, some of those things have potential to be addressed in Sunday school, helping to shape the theological minds of the rising generation of believers and church members. So for all of the critiques that I have had and still have about the black church, as the Sunday school superintendent, now I have the chance to be a helpful response. Be the solution, bro. You the superintendent now. Since they was doing it wrong, you the superintendent now. What books are you going to get for them to read? What theology will you bring? What field trips? What special guests? Man, I'm going to bring Freedom School. I am beginning to bring Freedom School spirit to our Sunday school experience. And this generation of people growing up in this Freedom School at the Shiloh Baptist Church in Baltimore County will have a different point of reference in terms of their upbringing and their faith formation because of me, out of all the hats I already got on my head. But I recognized that if it was going to get better, I had to lean in, join with others, and do it and make it better. And that's the call to action that I would extend to others too.
The influence is real. I was actually having a conversation the other day, and we talk about this, like the rise of influencers that's been happening, and like what is an influencer? And it really is anyone, who has an opportunity to like really make influence and to help inform, the way inform a direction, anything, a movement. And so I don't take that lightly at all. I know that you made this point a while back when I was asking about the considerations, but I just want to tie the two together about like that buy-in, when we talk about the considerations of like, oh, like would this be a great model, for this church or, another organization? I feel like that could just be like a course that's like packaged up, Pastor, because as you had said, you can have a really great idea, but if the buy-in isn't there with leadership, it's really just it's gonna fall on deaf ears, to be truthfully honest. And so it's actually a thing that I wish more people would understand. And I actually had to learn it the hard way. Like I worked in racial equity prior to where I am now. And the biggest thing about getting these trainings into these municipalities was starting with the mayor, starting with the top. I was just like, do they believe in this? Because if they don't, we got to move on. Sorry, you can help massage this work in, you can help influence, the mayor and leadership and council, but that's super, super, super important. I mean, like I've actually even, I think actually a few years ago, you might have like dropped a template or email or something. I forwarded along to my church. They didn't respond back. I was like, all right. Okay, then, trying to take advantage, like they have the small circles, the small groups. Maybe this could be a thing, but it's all good, But it also sounds like it's a little bit of a long-term game, possibly too, when you talk about like watching, like what is it that the church is doing? What is their agenda for the year? What are their goals? Like how can this complement what they're already doing? And that's not a thing that can happen in a month. It might take 6 months. It might take 2 years. You never know. But if you have the will, if you have the mental capacity, the physical capacity to do it, I definitely encourage those because setting aside and just going back to you speaking to like the nuances, right? And being able to like separate, what you might have experienced, but then also just the belief in like what the Black church can do. And I do believe that obviously there's lots of like the Black church holds like a lot of power. And I feel like I've been in like that nuanced position for quite some time. And I truly do believe in the power of the Black church and just setting aside like what my experiences might have been, but just knowing that goodness, again, when I go back, even in my mind, I'm walking, literally like on the ground in my aunt's church, and I'm like, my gosh. And all of what you had stated before, like that gap between the elders and like the young ones, that is super present. I swear that's going through my mind when I'm singing in the church. I'm just like, who is going to step up next? Who is it? Like and so like and like no shade to that church. Like I love that church. My grandmother, I bring her, she loves going. But those are the things that I think about when I'm sitting in these institutions. Like I think about that. And so my hope and prayer is that, this really is this message really reaches the person who needs to hear, like all people, right? But that we do see more of a movement and folks like looking to the church, and again, naming that folks have different and varied experiences with the church, right? So I definitely want to name that. And as someone who's gone through that, but there is so much power there. And often, the very first place that someone turns to when they can't pay a utility bill, when they can't, make their mortgage or their rent is to the church. And with that, Pastor, as we round out, we talked about like obviously that opportunity for that being a solution to, this food crisis, this looming food crisis it's here. Like, let's just say it's here, right? But with our greatest threat is like comes the greatest opportunity, right? I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, like a large part of the model, but just financially, like when we talk about entrepreneurship, when we talk about, like even farmers, like it is a business and the CSA, that is a business, just what opportunities financially from an economical standpoint, entrepreneurial standpoint, especially in this time, because what I feel like is going to happen is when COVID happened and everything was you went to a farmer's market, you couldn't get anything off the shelf. Like everything was gone. Rice was gone, lettuce was gone, everything was gone. They were making bank, and it was an awful time. We lost lives, lots of lives. And I was having this conversation the other day. I was like, this crisis is here. And like, I'm not here to share doom and gloom, but it's here. We know what's happening around us. And this is really a great opportunity for our farmers and our growers to like, they're going to be turning to farmers and growers. Like, I just believe that in my heart. Like, even more, like, more so, because they're going to need to, because this grocery store, the supply chain, shot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're so on point, and I can't thank you enough for the ways in which you are pointing at the larger social, political, economic, and systemic factors that affect our food environment. It's really something that for too many people, they're not aware of. They're not conscious eaters, right? They're not aware of the environment that they're in. It's almost like, oh, this will exist forever. It's like, no, it won't. And so when we look at what's happening with the United States military attack and assault on Iran, as much as that for some people can feel like just something that's happening, fall over there, it ain't got nothing to do with me. Your comment is actually helping us to see, wait a minute, yes, it does. Because if fertilizer that's needed for farming is coming from there, not even to mention Ukraine, fertilizer out of Ukraine for farming. And I had literally black farmers calling me at the onset of war in Ukraine, farmers calling me saying, Rev, we need your help, because what happens when these world events take place, especially in these small rural towns that already have issues, there still to this day. But this one farmer in particular, I won't say his name, but this one farmer in particular called me on Sunday morning before I was walking into the church to start my service. And with distress in his voice said, Rev, we need help. He said, and I'm saying it as plainly as he said it, he said, the white farmers down here have rushed into the stores and bought up all the fertilizer because of what was happening at that time beginning in Ukraine. And he said, the black farmers don't have fertilizer. And if we don't have fertilizer, we won't have the same kind of yields and harvest. And that affects the bottom line of our business. As you rightly said, farming is a business. And so the same thing with Iran, the same thing with new regulations with respect to SNAP beneficiaries, where they have to work, they have work requirements now, or volunteer. And so here is the silver lining, and I'm with you. Doom and gloom ain't the mission, but we gotta be real about what's happening. So here's the struggle with the new tightened work requirements with SNAP, right? It's a challenge for many people. Here's the silver lining. Wait a minute. Volunteerism is permissible underneath the umbrella of these new requirements. So if these new federal requirements say you have to volunteer or have to be pursuing a job or have to work, my brain says, from I'm just blooming where I'm planted, last time I checked, the church needs more hands to help with stuff, don't it? What if we could organize willing, welcoming churches with SNAP benefit, those who are receiving SNAP benefits, and come together, satisfy and check the box of federal requirements so they can keep their benefits, and at the same time get people helping to grow, lead, innovate, and revolutionize these churches that desperately need some help. It could be a mutually beneficial thing. I wrote an op-ed about this and published it not long ago about finding the silver linings in the political struggles that we're seeing right now, and training ourselves, almost like growing our muscles to look for the opportunity when disruption happens. And that's just an example of that. And so I think the food crisis, a lot of people they're not even conscious of it. So I appreciate you speaking to it, but they will be conscious of it very soon to a greater degree, because what's happening that we're watching on the news will have a ripple effect later this year, early next year, some are saying, and we're going to start seeing disruptions again, like we saw during COVID. And the Strait of Hormuz, we've heard more about the Strait of Hormuz. Like a few months ago, we ain't know what the strait was. Strait what? Now we are experts on geopolitical news around the Strait of Hormuz, because even with oil and other assets moving through that strait, If that's interrupted, you might think that's just something going on in some other part of the world. No, sis, no, bro. It's going to disrupt these large capitalistic chains, the logistics, supply chain and logistics, and it has disruption for us. So I'll just say the urgency for me is very real when it comes to this. Yes, we're in the middle of it. Yes, we got to, I think, have a both and approach. And so I've been working with some food banks around what they could do better when it comes to, because they have systems, they have relationship, they got trucks, they got cold storage. Let's be real. They got stuff. All right, fine. So their theory of change doesn't align as deeply with my organization. But if there's some areas of value alignment and overlap, then how can we find some ways to partner? And so I'm excited for the things that we're doing, for example, with the Maryland Food Bank and the conversations we've had with other food banks around things that they could do. That's cool, right? So that's one end. Emergency, urgent, right now. Okay, we got a thing. The other thing is the longer view. How do we look a little deeper now and put things in place so that we don't come to these moments anymore? Like, come on, stop. With climate change, war, and so much more, we're going to keep on having this to a greater degree. So we got to invest in infrastructure, systems. We got to think. I'm even talking to them. I have 2 teenage boys who are in high school. They'll be in college. I talk to them about going to get agriculture degrees or degrees related to engineering, like just being more strategic. Like, hey, I really want to support them in what makes your heart sing. And I'm curious if something that makes your heart sing also aligns with what can help Black people. And so even having those kind of conversations. I'll close on this. I know time is up, but I'm in my succession season, Melissa L. Jones. I have, in 4 years, if plan stays as it is, and Lord willing, I will step down as the executive director of the Black Church Food Security Network. You heard it here first. Breaking news. And I'm taking a long succession period on purpose because I want to do everything I can to set the stage well for those who will follow me in this work at the intersection of faith and food sovereignty. A lot of this stuff, a lot of the things that I've been blessed to be a part of with so many others did not exist prior to us starting this work 11 years ago. But now there's a field, there's an emerging and budding field in seminaries where they're studying food, faith, and ecology. There's programs that are being set up. I'm so grateful to see it. And I want to just do my part to help the next generation of folks who see the utility of activating the organized people and organized money found under the umbrella of Black churches to create change for Black people in a liberative manner. And so I'm putting the word out. I'm casting seed on purpose. Last time I say I cast seed, I'm going to cast some more seed. And let's just come back in 4 years, Melissa. Let's have a conversation again when I step down. And I'll still be a part of the work, maybe an ambassador, board member, something else. But the day-to-day executive director, sometimes founders and executive directors hold on too long. And I'm not going to be in that camp. I'll be 50. By the time I step down, I'm 50. I'll be 50. And I have this vision in my head at my 50th birthday party of celebrating the passing of the baton and being the Flavor Flav behind the young folk who will be taking this work to places I couldn't even imagine or dream. And I also want to set the role up, the admin business side of the position, because everybody not going to do what I've done because this was the vision that God gave me some years ago, right? So I got to make sure the money is good. So you're going to get paid 6 figures. You're going to have great benefits. You're going to have abundant vacation. You'll have a month and a half off. You'll have perks and all the, like, I can't compete with IBM and Microsoft and all that, Amazon. I can't do that. But we also don't have to ask people to eat bologna sandwiches, and give themselves away for the liberation of Black people and just forget that they need support too. I'm not going to ask. I don't want that for me. I've not had that for me, Melissa L. Jones. Let me tell you very clearly that I've made sure that all this hard work I'm doing, I'm taking care of, and I'm taking care of well. And those who follow me will be taken care of even better, because I got to make sure that whether it's the executive director or other C-suite levels and positions in the organization, that people know that, yes, it's hard work. Yes, you're going to have to sacrifice something. Yes, it's going to be deep work, heavy work, but I'm not asking you to not live an abundant, full, happy, joy-filled life. That too is the revolution. And if anything, I want my experience in this position to be an example of how both can be true. I enjoy what I do every day. And I want to, 4 years out, start giving people a heads up. It's coming, y'all. And I want to be spending time with more younger people, newer professionals in the space, intentionally hanging out with those who might think, they want to do this. And so my courting season has begun. Unofficially, it will begin officially at some point. But it's time for bro to slide over and make some room for somebody else to get on the mic and other people to get on the mic. And I'm looking forward to that.
I love when exclusive news is dropped here on Edible Activists. That is incredible. You have really started a movement, and I know, we have to give credit to our great ancestors and all the elders too that have been along with you on this journey. But you started something, Pastor, and I mean, you've been the only person that I've talked to in this space to, to talk about the intersection of faith and food sovereignty. So I just wanted to give you your flowers and all of your credit, but then again, acknowledging all the people, that were with you that you learned from as well. So thank you so much. I love that it was just a little promo of what's to come, so if you're looking for a job, a near future. But I hope that I can also just, celebrate your succession as well. So thank you so very, very, very much. Pastor, this was our second conversation. Man, like I could have went down so many lanes. I would love to have more conversations. I would love to actually invite just other people into the fold because there are some names that were going through my mind of folks who I've interviewed in the past. I was like, if I can get these people in a room, and I've said this before, like, oh my goodness, the robust conversations. And I feel like the solutions that we will walk away with. So I hope this won't be like the second to last time, I guess, if I said that right, that I see you here on the show. So you all heard it. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Pastor Heber Brown III. And thank y'all again. Thanks for tuning in. Peace. Thank you for listening to Edible Activists. You can find today's episode on Spotify, iTunes, and Simplecast, and follow along on all social media platforms at Edible Activists for updates. Want to support this platform? You can do so by purchasing our commerce or connecting with me about media partnerships at www.edibleactivist.com. In the words of Baba Tariq Adunu, there is no culture without agriculture. Peace.